In a movie where 80-year-old Indy is reluctant to go on any more adventures, you couldn't have had him refer to his old age saying, "Dinosaurs belong in a museum." Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is the fifth and final film about the whip-wielding cinematic icon, once again portrayed by Harrison Ford. At rock bottom in his life, an elderly Indiana Jones is dragged back into action by his goddaughter, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. They set out on a globe-trotting hunt for a device forged by Archimedes, before a former Nazi, played by Mads Mikkelsen, can unleash its powers for his own nefarious plans. If there was one movie this entire year that I really wanted to be good, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was the one. Indiana Jones is high on my list of long-running franchises that mean the most to me, just below Jurassic Park and Star Wars. My dad first introduced me to these movies around the time that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came to DVD. I loved Harrison Ford as the character, and I loved the swashbuckling adventures chasing down biblical relics. The Last Crusade, in particular, is one of the greatest action-adventure movies ever made. As much of a landmark film Raiders of the Lost Ark is, I really do think The Last Crusade surpasses it. Temple of Doom, I think, is just alright, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull ain't that great. This being a series that really should have ended with The Last Crusade to begin with, I mean, it ended with Indy, his father, and Sala literally riding off into the sunset. I was looking forward to Dial of Destiny because I certainly wanted to see Indy go out on a better note than Crystal Skull. I was going to do a review series on all four prior movies in celebration of the release of the new one. However, the hype died down for me with all the negative press that it got after its premiere at Cannes Film Festival. I didn't read any full reviews or plot details, but I didn't like the sound of the blurbs and headlines that I did read. Although, in the following month, as more reviews poured in, the ratings went up quite substantially, so I went to the theater on opening night feeling really split down the middle. And I can say that I left the theater feeling pretty much the same way, really split down the middle. As an Indiana Jones adventure overall, I can confidently say that Dial of Destiny is an improvement over Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. As a send-off to the character, it's also better, yet simultaneously worse in a few respects. It's interesting to say the least. While Steven Spielberg is still executive producer, this is the only film in the series not directed by him, which did feel like a loss when it was announced. But the director this time is James Mangold, who has done a variety of terrific films like Logan, Walk the Line, 3:10 to Yuma, and Ford v Ferrari. And here, he replicates the vibes that Spielberg brought to those earlier films pretty well, most indisputably in the film's opening 20 minutes. It starts in 1944 with Indy and his current sidekick Basil Shaw, played by Toby Jones, going into Nazi forces to retrieve the Holy Lance, and it leads them to their first discovery of the movie's titular MacGuffin. As we've known for a while, de-aging effects were used on Harrison Ford in this scene, and for the most part it looks really impressive, though for some reason it was whenever he blinked that it didn't look natural. As the scene goes from an escape from a collapsing building to a battle on board a train, it brings in all the classic Indiana Jones feelings. Indy's smart-mouth remarks, suspenseful yet slightly amusing predicaments he gets into, and a very humorous oh crap moment when he accidentally blows his cover. This opening sequence alone is 10 times better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Now, the movie never quite reaches that level of pure gleeful fun again, mainly because when it flashes forward to 1969 during the moon landing, we meet with a rather different version of Indy who is well past his prime and now retiring from his work as a professor. It seems to be quite a hot trope right now, taking our heroes and making them into bitter and or broken old men. James Mangold has done this well before with Logan, and Lucasfilm, they did it quite poorly with Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, but then they did it much better with Obi-Wan Kenobi, which, despite some silly moments, was a pretty great series. In this movie, I was on board with it to an extent, although if you're among the 10 people out there who liked Crystal Skull, the reason for Indy's crotchetiness may very well piss you off. Still, I really enjoyed seeing him go from this grumpy old coot who falls asleep in his underwear in front of the TV to donning his fedora and cracking his bullwhip again. After Harrison Ford kept getting dragged back into Star Wars, a franchise that it's clear he doesn't really care for, It's great to see him having some fun in his old age, returning to the character that he does care about. At 81 years old now, I don't know exactly how many of his own stunts Harrison Ford did, but I kept an eye out for any instances there may have been too conspicuous green screen or stunt doubles. And the only time I caught anything a bit obvious was when Indy has to make 3 or 4 giant steps from one boat to another, and as he does so, there's smoke obscuring his face, which was probably intentional. Although something I did read Ford did on his own was riding a horse through a New York City parade and getting chased down into subway tunnels, making for, I'd say, his most triumphant moment in the film. In fact, all of the action scenes are absolutely Indiana Jones worthy. I never would have guessed that you'd be able to make a thrilling chase with flimsy 3-wheeled auto rickshaws, but by golly, they pull it off. The action is also fairly more grounded than the last movie. There's nothing as crazy as nuking the fridge. Though the chase scenes could have used a few more wide shots like in the older movies, rather than everything being filmed up close. Whatever green screen was used in the movie, I don't think it was as obvious as, say, the jungle scenes in Crystal Skull, although during the train chase at the beginning, I know it was used, not because the green screen itself was transparent, but because Indy is hanging upside down from the roof of the train going 50 miles an hour, and he's not losing his hat. Now, Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena Shaw, the daughter of Indy's colleague who helped discover the dial, her role in this movie is not as bad as some clickbaity headlines and thumbnails have made it sound. I didn't find her quite as irritating as I did Willie in Temple of Doom. Frankly, all of her cringiest moments are in the marketing.
You stole it. Then you stole it.
And then I stole it. It's called capitalism.
Excuse me, I think the word you're searching for is taxation. The writers seem to have so little confidence that the audience will like her, that at one point she actually has to proclaim that she's strong, resourceful, self-sufficient, blah blah blah. There are a few parts like that where it's almost like she's giving a rave review of the movie as we're watching it. She tries to convince Indy to come on this adventure with her, saying, and I quote, "A final triumph, Indiana Jones, back in the saddle, going out with a bang." I'm not selling this, am I? Well, given the box office numbers, I'd say not. Give some credit, though, at least she has something of an arc. She starts off as sort of a sly thief. She frames Indy into bringing her to the first half of the dial he's been studying for a long time. She takes it and leaves him in the dust, because she's just all about the money and glory. But as the movie goes on, she actually comes to realize just how much she needs Indy for this adventure, because sometimes you gotta listen to the elders. And no, Indy does not cower in a corner the whole time while Helena does all the work. He certainly has more to do for the story than Alan Grant in Dominion. If we're talking characters who don't progress the story at all, that would be Helena's teenage sidekick named Teddy. I really have no idea why he's in the movie. There's nothing memorable about him. He's definitely no short round. There's a section of the movie when he gets taken captive by the bad guys, and this doesn't help Indy and Helena find their destination any quicker or anything. He just manages to escape all on his own. Indeed, this is a 2.5-hour movie that does feel like it could have been the standard 2 hours that its predecessors ran for. The first half is actually very tightly paced, but the second half could have used some trimming. Most Indiana Jones movies contain a sequence that features some creeping thing, whether it be snakes or fire ants, and in this case, it's when Indy and Helena squeeze through a narrow part of a cave crawling with centipedes and tarantulas. But it doesn't serve as anything of an obstacle. All it is bugs crawl all over them, they get grossed out for about 30 seconds, and then they just go on their merry way. It's some scenes like that are just kind of half-hearted paint by numbers. Now, besides Harrison Ford as the title character, the defining factor that makes a great Indiana Jones adventure is when it's a treasure hunt filled with clues for an artifact that has significance to history and or religion. Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade, being the 2 best films in the series, are also the 2 that set that standard. What Temple of Doom lacked was a good mystery to solve, and what Kingdom of the Crystal Skull lacked was a MacGuffin that had any link to mythology or history, and instead just lent itself to uninspired sci-fi. I choose to believe that Spielberg was approached with the idea for that movie by the pigeons from Bolt.
Aliens.
Oh, snap.
Aliens?
Audiences love aliens.
Holler back.
It'll be huge, man. Huge.
You can't touch us.
The dial in this new movie is a better idea. Not only is it rooted in history, but it's a thing that really exists. In fact, my dad's prediction as to what the device would be turned out to be correct. The drawback, though, is that the powers of the device are explained through science and mathematics. There's technically nothing supernatural about it, which for Indiana Jones, I think is another key element. I don't even necessarily need it to be linked to Christianity. Maybe an artifact with ties to the Buddha, or Quetzalcoatl, or the flying spaghetti monster might have been interesting to explore. Okay, maybe not the FSM. Though sure, you can count the fact that the opening scene involves the Holy Lance, which if you don't know is the spear that punctured Jesus' side. Also, there's a very confusing flaw in the logic of what the dial ends up doing toward the end of the movie that I won't get into yet, but I think even someone who isn't scientifically savvy could see how little sense it makes. The climax of the movie is a real fun kind of bonkers. It's just the right level of big and weird for Indiana Jones to go out on. However, it results in the number one thing in this movie that is unforgivable. It's one of the worst writing decisions in the whole franchise, if not the worst. For both the adventure and Indy's character arc, it is woefully anticlimactic. If there is one justifiable reason to hate the character of Helena, this is it. While the very last scene of the movie does have some heartfelt moments, it's because of what led to that ending that it didn't leave as strong an impact on me as it should have. I do want to talk more about this movie in a separate spoiler talk video. For now, I can't deny that choice at the end did leave a rather sour taste in my mouth. However, I also can't deny that I really enjoyed the action. I loved seeing Harrison Ford in this iconic role one last time, and I really enjoyed hearing the final notes of musical score from John Williams. This is his exit from film altogether, and we get some really good pieces composed by him, both old and new. In most superficial aspects, this does feel like a real Indiana Jones adventure. It's just in terms of substance that it leaves some things to be desired. Scoring on the Factor Facts, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny whips up a 63%. That's a wrap. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this review helpful. Like and share, subscribe for more. This is Pop Culture. I'm Alex Pop.